Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Some people are not prepared to deal with the reality that we are not alone in the universe. Some people are just not prepared to deal with it. That's just the cold, hard facts, folks. And it's not just a majority of the people on this planet. It's actually people who are within the UFO community itself, people who claim to be interested in this subject, but then when they are presented with the absolute proof, their brain cracks in half. Take the case of John Greenwald, the owner and operator of the Black Vault, who last week went ballistic, basically, online and tried to smear my name, tried to make fun of the evidence that I tried to show him and tried to explain to him. He wouldn't even, he couldn't handle it. He recognized that I was showing him an image of what looked to him like an alien, which, because it was a gray alien, but his brain couldn't handle it, and he thought that I had done something to that Las Vegas alien video to make it look that way, because he's not ready. He's not ready. He thinks he's ready, but he's not ready. There's something in a lot of us. It's not his fault. It's just the way we are. We're not ready. We're not ready to accept this, a lot of us, because we know that once this happens, once a disclosure occurs where everyone knows the truth, right, it's going to be too much. It actually is. You're seeing it right now. Right, we've had for the past 10 months, right, we have been laying out all of this evidence with regard to this Las Vegas alien incident, and we've been showing anybody that will look at it, trying to explain to them why this constitutes proof that we're not alone. But for some people, and even people within the UFO community itself, they're having trouble. That's because their brains just aren't, everyone's. It's just a difficult thing to accept for a lot of people. I mean, even myself, I can tell you, when I had that incident when I was a kid where the creature was in my room, I mean, I knew at first that this thing really happened. I knew I had some sort of an experience with some being in the room. And the next day, when no one would believe me, I realized, wow, no one's ever going to believe me. And I'm the only one who's going to know for sure whether this thing happened or not. And I know for a fact personally that it happened, but I cannot prove that to anyone else. And I knew that that's how it's going to be. But I didn't know what it was. I didn't even think aliens or extraterrestrials at that time. I was thinking about demons from hell, because that's the extent of my thought process at the time. I couldn't come up with any other explanation other than that. And so, time goes on, and then it takes a while to finally accept what it really was. It took like over 10 years before I put two and two together, and that's what it was. It was alien/NHI. That's what it was. It had to be. And then some 17 years after that event happened, in the early 1990s, in 1994, while on a fishing trip with a friend, both of us saw a UFO up close, within 20 feet, only 2.5 stories off the ground, no sound whatsoever, moving in ways that regular aircraft cannot move. And there was just no way it could have been anything other than some non-human intelligent craft. It was beyond any sort of technology that humans have ever created, that I've ever seen. I never saw anything like this, right? Nobody has. My friend's reaction at that time was, I'm not telling anyone. I'm not saying anything to anybody. And I remember the next day, I was still thinking that way myself. I did tell people the next day, but I was apprehensive about doing it because, for one thing, nobody's going to believe me. And, I have no proof other than the words that I have. And then when you do tell people, they don't believe you because their brains aren't ready. People just aren't ready to believe this. That's one of the other reasons. It's not just the stigma, but just the way we are designed, the way we're wired. We're not ready to accept this kind of information because we know deep inside that this changes everything. This is going to change the way we view our place in the universe. And for some people, it's too much, so they'd rather not even go there. I mean, you look back, this is how it's always been. You look back through the centuries. In the 1500s, the Italian philosopher and astronomer Giordano Bruno, right? He ended up spending the last 7 years of his life in prison because the Catholic Church and the Pope thought he was a heretic. Because he believed that the stars out in the sky at night were actually suns, that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, that there's probably life completely divorced of the kind of life we have here on Earth that's is on other planets, things like that. They didn't want to hear that. I mean, they were trying to get him to concede that hey, you got to believe in the Trinity and in the divinity of Christ and transubstantiation and the eternal damnation, and he wasn't buying any of that. He said, it's because of that. That's why they ended up killing him. They put a clamp on his tongue ultimately let him out in the street, and then, because they didn't want him to say anything, they didn't want his ideas or concepts to be spread out among the populace, so they make sure that he couldn't say anything else, and they put a clamp on his tongue and tied him to a stake and burned him alive. Isn't that pretty much how things are today, except they're not without the killing part for the most part? I mean, there are people still killing each other, right? Of course. But I mean, basically what happens now is like, look what happened to David Grush. We can't have this guy coming out. Why don't you, someone contact Ken Klippenstein? He's a good hit piece reporter. He'll dig up some dirt on him and make him look like a crackpot. So that's how they handle that now. I mean, it's different than these days than it was back then. They don't take you to the stake and burn you alive. They just try to smear you. Pretty much what happened with last week with Greenwald, where he tried to make me look like an idiot by responding to evidence that I'm showing him, imagery with laughing emojis, like, it's not even worth commenting on this or discussing this because you're just crazy, right? So that's how people are. They just can't deal with it. Anyway, I was looking up some information about this today, and I asked questions. I did some things with AI, asking about like why do people have such difficulty dealing with new concepts, and this is what I got. It says, new concepts are often difficult for people to accept because they can challenge existing beliefs, create discomfort with the unknown, and require individuals to adjust their understanding of the world, which can lead to resistance due to factors like cognitive dissonance and a natural inclination toward familiar patterns of thinking. Yes, when you present something like this, when you're trying to convince the world of the reality that there's a alien presence here among us that is technologically more advanced than we are, it's too much for them to deal with. And then they suffer from cognitive dissonance. And what is cognitive dissonance? When presented with new information that contradicts existing beliefs, people may experience mental discomfort, leading them to either reject the new information or reinterpret it to fit their existing framework. Yes. Well, like, for instance, let's take the Vegas alien incident. What do people say there? Okay, it must be shadows. It must be just camera anomalies. Maybe there was a hoax, things like that, because they don't want to accept the reality that actually those people really saw aliens in their backyard in 2023. They don't want to accept that reality. They'd rather think there must be some other explanation. They just can't accept it. No matter how, that case, when you look at that case, right, that case absolutely proves that we're not alone. Absolutely proves it. But for some people, they can't see it. They just can't see it. It's the smartest people among us. There's some smart people out there that will look at this, right, and they're not going to see it. Their brains are going to shut down. Right? They can't handle it because it's going to challenge them to such a degree that they don't even want to go there. And it continues here. It says, fear of the unknown. Humans tend to favor the familiar and can be apprehensive about embracing new ideas that might disrupt their current understanding or routine. Yes, all of a sudden now, you're living your life, you're reading your daily newspaper, you're watching your TV show at night, you're going to bed and going to work the next day, you're going to church on the weekends, and all of a sudden now somebody's telling you, guess what? We're not alone. It's not just human beings. There's other beings here with us, and they're way smarter than we are, and who knows what they're up to? We don't know. But they're here. People don't want to deal with that. That's too much. That's too much for some people. They can't handle it. But the reality is that they're here. There is something here, and we got to start thinking about this. This is why a lot of us out here are doing what we're doing, because we're trying to wake up the rest of the world to this reality. I mean, I know John Greenwald, he's been filing all these Freedom of Information Act requests for 25 years or so, maybe longer. I don't know exactly, but he's been doing it since he's a teenager, doing a great job of it. And I think eventually, in his mind, he probably someday at some point we're going to get this proof from the government, and that's going to show the world, or somebody from the government is going to finally tell us the truth. He's probably thinking things like that in his head. But then all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, a grassroots group of people are trying to show him, oh no, we already have the evidence that shows we're not alone, right? But that's not the way he wanted it to go down, or a lot of people don't want it to go down that way. They want the truth to come from the government. They didn't think it would happen like this. And this is only one little case. Now that we have, as our technology continues to advance, if something like this happens again, I can't imagine something ever again happening exactly like what happened in Las Vegas, but something similar could happen. More evidence is going to be presenting itself. It's just going to keep building up, and it becomes undeniable. But we have it right now. But some people can't accept it because their brains, because of cognitive dissonance, because of the fear of the unknown, things like that. It makes them not want to go there. In the final analysis, yes, some people express an interest in getting to the truth, but then when they finally are presented with facts that show that unequivocally, right, that this is real, that this phenomenon is real, and that there is something really here that's alien to us, right? That's too much. Something happens to their brains, obviously. Another thing it says here is lack of reference point. When encountering a completely novel concept, individuals might struggle to relate it to anything they already know, making it harder to grasp and accept. Yes, it's just it's just the same idea here. How does somebody relate to this all of a sudden? Oh my God, those stories I heard that I thought were a joke are real, and now here I'm being told I need to accept it because it's real. You know what? I can't do it. I can't do it. Right? That's how some people are. They can't help it. Social influence, group norms, and peer pressure can also influence how readily people accept new ideas, with individuals potentially conforming to the majority opinion, even if they have reservations. See, that's why, there's a lot of people who easily fall under the spell of random internet people that they don't even know who they are, but they'll see all these different comments from all these different names. How do you know who they are? You don't know who they are. Like, say somebody puts on a really good, presents a really good story on Reddit somewhere, on UFO Reddit, right? And then you have like a whole bunch of people that come and say, oh, this is a joke because of this reason and that reason and this reason, and there's a whole bunch of other people agree. And then the dummies out there, the easily manipulated dopes, they think they're smart then by adding some of their comments. That's how that works on the internet. As in, people, a lot of us are stupid too on top of it. We got to point this out. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of stupidity and ignorance. Actually, when you really think about it, debunkers themselves, UFO debunkers, they're like parasites. They feed on ignorance. That's what they do, and it just breeds more stupidity and more ignorance from that. That's what they are. They're masters at expanding stupidity and ignorance. That's what UFO debunkers are. Anyway, continuing here, it says prior knowledge and expertise. People with strong expertise in a particular field might be more resistant to new ideas that challenge their existing knowledge base, potentially leading to skepticism. Again, look at some of the reactions we have from the UFO community itself. Like, they had their ideas about how this whole disclosure thing was going to go down. They did not have on their bingo card aliens landed in a backyard in Vegas that shows them unequivocally that we're not alone, and they thought something from the government would come first. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But because it didn't happen the way they wanted to, they don't accept the real evidence that they're shown in their face. And then talks about how to facilitate acceptance of new concepts. What do people need to do to accept? What do you need to do to help people accept these new concepts? It says a clear explanation. Break down complex ideas into understandable components using relatable analogies and examples to bridge the gap between the new concept and existing knowledge. That's all we can do. You have to keep beating the drum with the evidence that we have out there, all the evidence, everything. You keep beating the drum with the evidence you have out there until people finally come around. Gradual introduction. Introduce new concepts incrementally, building upon existing understanding to ease the transition. Isn't that what's happening right now with a lot of people in the disclosure movement? A lot of the whistleblowers, where it's like a slow kind of disclosure, a slow burn. Even though we have the absolute proof at our fingertips right now, I mean, that informs us that we're not alone. But still, that process is still ongoing, and I think that was planned in my mind. I think that a lot of people involved in this disclosure, they planned it this way, a gradual introduction. Even if you think about it, when who was it? Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean did that article about David Grush. They wrote that initial article. They didn't talk about the alien biologics. That's too much. They felt that was too much because some people they can't hear that. They're not ready for that. Isn't that weird? I mean, it's okay to talk about the UFOs and the craft, right? But you can't talk about the beings because for some people that might be too much. So they didn't go there in their first initial article about David Grush. It's unbelievable, but that's what they felt was necessary, I guess. Right? You look at throughout the 50s, 60s, into the 70s, right, when this some of the serious researchers, they didn't really want to talk about the beings themselves. They didn't want to talk about that. It wasn't until someone like Leonard Stringfield in the 1970s started talking about crash retrievals, for instance. People weren't talking about that at all, actually, for the most part. In the early 50s they were, but then that went underground, the discussion of crash retrievals and reverse engineering and that kind of thing, right? But it wasn't until someone like Leonard Stringfield started investigating this where we started hearing more. Let's see. Address concerns. Actively acknowledge and address potential doubts or concerns people may have about the new concept. Positive framing. Present the benefits and positive implications of adopting the new concept, highlighting potential advantages and improvements. And then finally, open communication. Foster a supportive environment where open discussion and questions are encouraged, allowing for clarification and better comprehension. So that's where we are with this right now. And it's just... It doesn't matter. The reason why some people are reacting like this to the proof, it's because of cognitive dissonance. They're just not ready. Even people within the UFO community itself, it just breaks their brains. They can't handle it. They're not ready for it. That's not the way they saw it going down. That's not the way they want it to go down. They don't want to accept this because of that. For the most part, I wowould say cognitive dissonance. I think for a lot of other people, like on the debunker side of it, it's more fear of the unknown. Plus the ignorance and stupidity that is constantly, regularly dished out by people in the debunker cult. Okay, moving on. I want to talk about Wyoming. There was an article here from the CowboyStateDaily.com where the headline reads, 8 Wyoming sheriffs seeing mystery drones still have no answers. And I thought that this is funny, especially after hearing the recent news from the White House stating that, it's all nothing, nothing to see here. You can go home now. The FAA gave all of those drones were authorized by the FAA to fly, so there's nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. You can go home now. But that's really not the case. It's completely false and phony. That's not a true assessment of what's been going on here for the past few months. There's a lot of weird things that people have been seeing, a lot of strange drone events that don't make any sense, and there's more to it, and we're not being told the truth. I don't know what that truth is. I don't know. We can only speculate. But this story here tells me that, hey, this is something that's not just been happening on the East Coast. It's not even something it's been happening in the UK. It's been happening all over the world. And here, it's been happening in Wyoming as well. It says here, the White House says the drones over New Jersey last year were authorized, but that doesn't explain what multiple Wyoming sheriffs who reached out to Cowboy State Daily say they're seeing over power plants and oil fields. At least 8 Wyoming sheriffs have received reports of mysterious drone activity in recent weeks. 3 of those have documented mystery drone sightings over energy infrastructure like power plants and oil and gas fields, the sheriffs told Cowboy State Daily on Wednesday. The outlet reached out to every sheriff in Wyoming on Tuesday and Wednesday after President Trump announced that similar mystery drones spotted over Jersey late last year were not from enemy sources. Trump's spokeswoman said Tuesday that the drones were authorized by the FAA. The president's assurance with respect to New Jersey drones contains slightly more information than the federal government ventured last year, but it's not enough to diminish multiple Wyoming sheriffs' concerns over sightings in their own counties. Now, hold on a second. Now, I don't know if I believe in that statement. I thought the statement that Trump's administration issued with regard to these drones was pretty much the same kind of statement that was issued by people within the Biden administration. We got the same old nothing burger. So I don't know why that sentence is there. We didn't really get anything different. We nothing different. Here was a direct quote from Jason Moore, spokesman for the Sweetwater County Sheriff's Office. He says, "We remain in close communication with our state and federal partners, but we still don't have a conclusive explanation for these flights." The Sweetwater County Sheriff's Office has received 10 confirmed reports of unusual drone activity since early December. These display similar formations to those patterns reported across the nation, and most sightings happen after dark, Moore said. He described some grid-like formations, straight-line patterns, and some more spoke-like formations with multiple drones branching off from one large central drone. Okay, so look at that. Multiple drones branching off from one large central drone. What the hell is going on? Right? What's going on here? This doesn't sound normal to me. Sheriff's Office employees have seen the drone flights with their own eyes, and some people have furnished videos, he added. The initial reports were of drones over the Jim Bridger power plant. That's concerning, said Mower. Most of the other reports have been more random locations. And Mower continued, he says, my impression is it's a far wider spread issue here in Wyoming and has been pretty much this entire time. So the president's statement today, specific to the activity over New Jersey, does very little to ease our minds or give us any clarification or answers as to what's happening here in Wyoming. And then it talks about oil and gas field sightings. It says Sublette County Sheriff Casey Lair said his county has logged multiple sightings since January 1st, ranging from the county's southernmost border to its northern end. These sightings range from patterns involving 2 or 3 devices to 10 to 12 in formation. We've had 2 accounts of very large drones, and when I say very large, they're talking like the size of a Volkswagen vehicle, and several smaller drones flying in a grid pattern around that singular drone, said Lair. Others appear to be grid searching. We haven't been able to determine the origin or where these drones are going once they leave, he added. Now, let's stop there. Again, this is the same kind of story that's going on in Wyoming that they're talking about in Jersey just recently. They don't even know where they're coming from. They don't even know where they're going. They're showing up in great numbers with a central mothership kind of a drone. What in God's name is going on here? Law enforcement agents have confirmed the sightings, Lair added. Many are over the Mesa, a stretch of oil and gas infrastructure. Lair's office has reached out to every energy industry operating in the area, he said. His office has deployed search teams at night and obtained video footage, which it has been forwarding to the Wyoming Office of Homeland Security's News Tip site. So far, no one has come forward and admitted to operating the drones. The president's statement focused on New Jersey, but that leaves questions still burning in Wyoming, Lair said. And here was another guy here. Campbell County Sheriff Scott Matheny has had multiple drone sightings reported to his office, and in that county, it's nearly impossible to avoid energy infrastructure. He says, we have lots of structures here, the power plants and the coal mines. At some point, they are flying over those things because you can't not when you're in Campbell County. Matheny's undersheriff, Quentin Reynolds, has seen the drones in person as well, the sheriff added after speaking to Reynolds in the background of the call. But these drones don't appear to be flying in coordinated patterns, though 2 were spotted flying together, said Matheny. The sightings are typically, but not always, after dark. Matheny said he's curious about the drones, but with numerous other things to manage, including an uptick in U.S. immigration and customs enforcement activity, he's not yet overwhelmed with worry over the drones. And there's a lot more to this article. I'll leave the link for you so you can check it out. But this is a lot of different sheriffs. So you're talking 8 different sheriff's departments are telling you this. Not 5, not 6, not 7, 8. That's a lot. So there's a lot more going on with this drone mystery than what is being told to us by the government, and I think it needs to be pointed out on a regular basis. We need to keep talking about this. The drone, we're not getting the right answers on this. We're getting told, I'm not sure if it's half truths or lies, but it's not the full truth. I do know that. I will say that. Okay, moving on. I have a new segment. And it's called The Dumbest Thing You Ever Heard.
The dumbest thing you ever heard.
Yeah, I know. I recently started a segment called Cornfield of Pure Idiocy, and that is with regard to comments that get sent to either my Spotify or YouTube channel that are so stupid that I have to block that person forever and send them off to the Cornfield of Pure Idiocy. Well, this new one I have is called The Dumbest Thing You Ever Heard. And this is basically comments I find on the internet and by people who are known people, famous people, and sometimes you see these comments and you think to yourself, "My God, that is so stupid," right? And sometimes I think it deserves to be highlighted. You need to throw a spotlight on it just because it's so stupid. Okay, now John Greenwald. Now he's not the person who made this comment, but the person who responded to John Greenwald's comment is the person who made that comment. Greenwald said, when this was on January 22nd, he wrote, "The present-day UFO community is lost. The loudest leaders of it are largely resorting to straight-up grifting, televising tantrums, and are endlessly teasing that big things are coming that never do, or they go splat when they actually are finally revealed. It's time to get back back to the root of what this should be: valuable, open, and transparent conversation coupled with good old-fashioned research and common sense. Boy, let me just stop there for a second. You got to really appreciate that comment, especially after I got lambasted by him after trying to present to him information with regard to the Vegas alien case last week. You really got to wonder, what do you call what we've been doing? It's good old-fashioned research and common sense, and so I don't know what his problem is. But anyway, he also said, it's about what we can prove, not what we want to believe. It's time to accept that as a community, yes. And what we could prove, what we have proven, right, is that there are aliens really here, right? And you don't want to accept it. We did some good old-fashioned research like you're talking about, and guess what? We come up with a royal flush. We were able to show that aliens are really here without the assistance of the government. But anyway, Michael Shermer, the longtime debunker, had to chime in with this, and this is what he posted. He posted a picture of a bunch of different books, like by people from the 50s, by people like George Adamski, contact geek type books like Inside the Spaceship by George Adamski, Aboard a Flying Saucer by Truman Bertram, They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers by Gray Barker, and then another one by Adamski and Desmond Leslie called Flying Saucers Have Landed. A lot of that stuff was nonsense, but this is what he wrote, and this is the dumbest thing you ever heard.
The dumbest thing you ever heard.
This is this installment, the first installment of the dumbest thing you ever heard. He actually writes this. He says, actually, blackvault.com, the UFO community has always been lost. Here are just 4 books from the 1950s in my library of hundreds of such books making such claims over the past 75 years. If aliens were visiting, we would know by now. They're not. It's modern myth-making. Isn't that the dumbest thing you ever heard? Because it's one of the dumbest things I ever heard, because I know for a fact that there's aliens here, because I encountered one myself, right? On top of the tens of thousands of other people who encountered them themselves, right? In all the different UFO reports over the decades. This guy's a complete, absolute idiot when it comes to UFOs and aliens. He's either deliberately stupid or he's really stupid. I don't know which one it is for sure. I think he's really stupid. That's what I think. I think Michael Shermer is really stupid, and that's why his comment here actually is the very first dumbest thing you ever heard. So I just wanted to point that one out today. Anyway, I want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.